People don't realize how much is right within reach. And so many of us disqualify before you even try, before you even put your hand out.
What would you say to your younger self?
If I look back, there are some things for sure where I'm like, you should not have done that. The work that you can do on yourself right now will be there. Is that going to be a positive thing or a negative thing? You have to look at your past self with compassion, or else you'll basically just bury yourself.
It only takes one person to transform a space. These are pockets that you've made out of your healthiest part of your being to pour into others.
We're all starved of genuine connection.
What does the journey forward look like for you?
So I have no idea.
Today I sit down with a podcast favorite and returning guest, Helen Tafesse. She's a creative director out of York, Pennsylvania, and she knows her stuff. Last time I had her on the podcast, we talked about moving into a slower season of life, supporting other people's visions. In this episode, we talk a lot about truth. Why do we look for truth in our lives and in art? And why does truth matter in our lives as creatives? Thinking through these things together in a room, it just came so naturally, and the cameras were an afterthought. So check out this episode and conversation I had with Helen Tafesse. Welcome back to the Silo Podcast. I'm Austin, and I'm here with
Helen Tafesse.
What? She's back for another episode. Man, this is sick. Can't wait. But Helen, we were just actually having a conversation about like identity, basically, because in my questionnaire before the pod, we were talking about like the titles that you've gone under, and you said that you had a few, but then you went into more detail. I want to hear more about what you call yourself.
Yeah. So what stuck out to me on the pod form was it said, identify 5 characteristics about yourself. And, you know, I filled them out like, okay, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I think it was visionary, catalyst, nurturer, and then rebel, because when I was in school, they would label me that and be like, you don't listen to authority or whatever, which was not my intent. I just want to make that clear. But anyways, I listed all these things, kind of just moved on. And then the next question you had under that really intrigued me, because it was saying, and now I can't remember it again, but
what makes you different
yes,
from the rest of the people that will have the titles of catalyst, visionary?
Yeah, such a good question. Who came up with that question?
Also, freaking $5 words that you're using to describe yourself, which is super cool.
Yeah. So when I thought back on that, I was thinking about so much of, because now I'm in my mid to late 20s. Terrifying. But in my early 20s, I feel like people are reiterating to you, who are you? What is your identity? Especially in the culture we're in right now, it's emphasized even more, I think, subconsciously, because we're told to niche down, to have a brand, even if you're just a person. And I think it's a very inhuman thing that we're doing. Inhumane, whatever, thing that we're doing by saying focus on just one thing. So in those times, I remember feeling a little more chaotic or not grounded, because I would think to myself, okay, I'm a visionary, I have to be a visionary. Or I'm a leader, I have to be a leader. I have to have this type of personality. You know, when I was in school and I was getting to head up projects for the first time, I was like, all right, I have to be very dominant. I have to be very intense. And to be honest, that is kind of my personality anyways. But then when I moved back home, I started doing more collaborative work and realized you have to be more welcoming and make people feel comfortable. And obviously you should just be kind as a person, but even more so friendly, so that people feel as though you're not trying to take advantage of them. And that is authentically true. But sometimes I think I felt pressure to lean into that as if it was my whole personality. And it felt conflicting with my past experience before that of, I'm supposed to be direct and domineering or whatever, I can't find the balance in that. So I guess I'm switching my personality to this now. And then that started to feel inauthentic. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I think everybody has to go through these organic experiences of growing up. But now, which is why I appreciated your question, now I feel as though I can appreciate the nuance of I can be a visionary and nurturing at the same time. Those two things work together. I can be a catalyst and also welcoming at the same time. They go together, you know? So I think that's just been a really big part of the season I'm in right now, is understanding how can I work with myself on the same team instead of trying to be just one thing and feeling pressure from other people of you're this, you're that, we know you as this, and more just like nuance is okay. I am aware of all the different versions of myself that I have been, and I can start to bring them together instead of succumbing to this pressure of I'm just one thing, you know? So anyways, I really liked that question on your forum, and I had a whole existential moment while I was reading it. And then
If I can do that for you, we can do anything
just
here.
Bringing opportunity wherever you go.
Where do you think the stem of like culture saying that you can only be one thing comes from? Is there a point? Is there, it doesn't have to be like a one singular thing, but is there?
Well, I mean, I think social media definitely has not helped that at all. To grow and have influence, there seems to be lots of strategies for it online. And one of them primarily is make your message clear, niche down. And also, too, on social media, you're only seeing the highlights, or maybe not even just the highlights, but you're just seeing one format of that person's life.
Right. Yeah.
So I do think that subconsciously has an influence on people. And I think also, too, maybe this is an American thing, maybe not, but we just want things to be easy to understand up front and like obvious. I don't know if we're comfortable all the time with the tension it takes to sit and understand this is a very multi-layered person. Like, so I guess I would say yes, social media has had a huge influence on it. As our culture has continued to pick up speed, we do not have as much patience and endurance to sit with someone as a real human being. And I think as you deepen real life friendships, that's where you start to see people are layered. I mean, even not to call you out.
Oh no.
But
I'm not ready for this.
Even like you have many sides of you have so much space to hold for people that you don't know, and to be welcoming and friendly and approachable. But then also you're doing so many behind the scenes things that take really intense focus and internal reflection. You're also there to support your friends in a really calm, reassuring way too, you know? But some people might see Austin and be like, he's a really high energy guy who just makes all this stuff happen. And it's like, okay, yeah, he also has many other layers.
Right.
So, but you wouldn't know it if you don't slow down.
Ready to launch your idea, grow your side hustle, or dive into your passion full time? Pursuit Co-working in the heart of Midtown Harrisburg gives you the flexibility you want, productivity you need, and community you crave, kind of like us. Whether you need to work, meet, or gather, their hourly, daily, and monthly options will fit your bill perfectly. I can truly say working with them has been an amazing opportunity to meet other people who are also doing the creative side hustle work that I'm doing. So if you need to check that out, it's really worth your time. Follow your pursuit and tap the link in the description to schedule a tour today. Going back to what you said with like where you were in your early 20s versus where you are now, there are so many iterations that we go through as humans and creatives and whatever, whether that's brought on by environmental changes or internal changes or whatever you want to put out there. And I think it's cool that as you mature or as your brain develops when you're 25 or 26 or whatever, it's like you come to terms with like those past selves were like, was me in that time. It wasn't like, no, I'm cringing now at who I was. It was like, no, that brought me to where I am today. And it's like, you come to terms with like, yeah, I needed to be really rowdy or rambunctious or super secluded when I was 21 for me to be at the point where like I realize the value of family or whatever now,
Yeah.
or like encouragement later in life. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, there's something so interesting about like maturing. Here we go. We're both going to reflect now on like
Let's wander down a path of reflection.
Yeah,
together.
honestly, that's the title. Are you ready for it, guys?
I'm ready.
But
I'm ready.
like I've slowly come to terms with like who I was in the past, made who I am now. And like for me to ask the question, do you regret any of those things? I think someone that is in a season where they're not comfortable would say, oh, I have a lot of things that I want to change. I think it's more cliche now to say, no, I love everything about where I was. But like, I think there's a level of like depth that you go when it's like, no, I firmly believe that I'm in a good position now. Or if you're not in a good position, it's still like, hopefully you have hope that things will get better and realize that your past self put you for this reason.
And I think the way that you reflect on your past, it's not about like when you're saying somebody may look back and say, I do have regrets, you know, that is more about how you're looking at the future, I think. So if I look back, there are some things for sure where I'm like, you should not have done that. Just shouldn't have. Do I have regret? Maybe a teensy bit, but it's okay to just acknowledge that. And you're still choosing by saying, I don't have any regrets. It's not saying genuinely, I don't have any regrets. It's I'm choosing to look forward with the faith that it will continue to flush out better. It's not validating what you did. It's validating what is to come in a hopeful expectation, you know?
It's going to add hope to that. Yeah. If there's no, you don't need faith. You don't, I mean, not even in that whole field, not talking about faith, but you can have faith for the future, but there's also a version of hope in there as well.
Yeah. And one of the most meaningful things that somebody taught me, I mean, they just said it compassionately. They weren't like teaching me this, but probably 2 years ago, I was making some mistakes that I was utterly ashamed of, like hiding my face in shame. And they looked at me with one just unwavering, almost like comfortability. They didn't seem off-put by the decisions I was making. And they just looked at me and said, you did the best that you could do at that time. And you have to look at your past self with compassion, or else you'll basically just bury yourself and die there, you know? Yeah. But she did say to me, you know, think back on the decisions you were making at that time. Did you think this is the next best thing I could do? Even if the present version of yourself now is like, obviously, no, that was not it. Did you at that time think it was the best choice you could make, considering all the factors? If yes, just have compassion. And it's okay if I remember even crying in my car. I love a good cry in the car. I don't know.
Got to.
I don't know about you.
You gotta love, it's the car. It's that environment that just
it's so good.
Lets you be
I'm
yourself.
like, I can't even see the road, and I'm just like,
I need windshield wipers for my eyes.
And I'm just like crying. And I remember I was like, I didn't know. And I'm just like literally being so dramatic, just driving like, I didn't know what I was doing. And at the same time thinking, it's fine. You did it. It's fine. We're going to figure it out. But sometimes you just have to accept like, that was a mistake. I do slightly regret it, but I'm going to look forward to the future with hope, and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
And it is what it is in the end.
Mm-hmm. So we've been not seeing a ton of you for the last year. Our last interview was around this time. I won't even say interview. I hate interviews. Everyone has been saying interviews. And I'm like, dude, I just want it to be a conversation. Okay. So I don't know how that even slipped in my mind, because that's not even vocabulary I use. But it's been a year since our last like sit down interview podcast conversation.
Can you call it a chit chat?
Well, oh, sorry. Since our last chit chat, Helen.
Yes, perfect.
A lot has changed because you were coming off of the deep end of all of your like homecoming events, I would say. You know, you categorize them as your graduation, the pomp and circumstance, and all that stuff that have brought you back down to a non-high output in the community sense, maybe.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate, first of all?
Yeah.
In terms of community, I know you're doing a whole lot.
Sometimes I get worried that people are going to be like, she said she was done, but she's still doing stuff. But it is different because I'm not just doing like free community events or lots of collaborative work or whatever. I'm still producing work, but it's usually paid or sponsored, or you have to pay to participate.
Yeah.
So,
which is cool.
Yeah. So
you did the coffee house, which is super cool. But am I right to like not categorize that completely with what you were doing in the past? Like you kind of closed a chapter.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that was just something that you did as like a passion project.
Yeah. So the coffee house.
Yeah.
So the coffee house is actually secretly a fundraiser. Thank you for not outing me, but yeah. So that was my mentality moving into the next year, was these things need to serve some type of purpose. Whereas before, what I was doing was serving an exploration type. It was just scratching like an exploratory itch, basically. You know, like I just want to try stuff and see what happens. Whereas now, if there is a need, I will do something, but I'm not going to just create more work for myself for fun. Especially because I do work like 3 jobs. So I don't need to cause any more things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the coffee house was actually a fundraiser because I really wanted to go on a trip. And it was a education-based thing for probably like 7 to 10 days, I think. And there was travel involved and different costs, I guess. So for me, I was like, I know I can't go on this trip just for funsies. I do think it's important. I think what I would learn from it is important. And I don't love the idea of asking people to support you for things like that. So the idea came to me of, if I can provide something of value to you and you provide something of value to me, that is a fair, equal exchange. So I'm providing you an evening of entertainment, connection. And it was so nice. It was really, really hot because the building didn't have air conditioning, but we had, I think, about 85 people with attendees and vendors included, and none of the vendors had to pay to participate. They also just got to take home all their cash. It was $10 at the door, so it was very approachable, and then the music was what you were paying for. So yeah, somebody that was there also did the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And one of the quotes that they said that night was like, this just feels like coming home, like coming to your living room and the fam's all there, you know. And there was some people who didn't know what Older and Wiser was. They just came for fun. But it was really sweet that it gave people something emotionally, communally. It was entertaining. And then in the end, like, it also helped provide what I needed.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of stuff that I'm more invested in these days, is using all the things that I gathered over those years and solving practical needs with them.
Did you walk away with any just drive to do more?
Oh yeah.
What did you walk away with that other than the cash?
Yeah. So the building it's in is actually the Grotto Community Center new building, and I work at the Grotto as their community manager, but that event actually helped catapult me into a new role there, which was still pending, but I guess by the time this is released it will be a thing. So I have wanted to do basically what I did for Older and Wiser as a job for a long time, but finding a place that will hire you to do something like that is kind of ridiculous. Luckily, the Grotto in this area, let me clarify. Luckily, the Grotto is very unconventional. It's very forward thinking, and they loved the fact that that event created a heartbeat in the building, essentially. And that event went so well that it gave me the confidence to draft a proposal to send to them of like, hey guys, this is my dream role here. I think I can do it. I just did it. I think we should talk more about that.
Yeah.
And then they were like, yeah, this definitely is what we want to have happening here all the time. So not only did I walk away from that with the support that I needed for one thing, but it's now opening doors for me to try out a dream job.
So exciting.
That hopefully I do a good job in.
Yeah.
But our goal would be to have an event of that size like every other month at the building. So, yeah.
Is that daunting?
It is a little bit. Yeah. I wasn't expecting... First of all, I was only expecting like 30 people to come to that coffee house. So the fact that it even worked, I was like, oh my gosh. And that's how I feel about every event.
Right. You never know.
You just never know. You never know.
Especially if it's free and you don't like RSVPs or anything like that.
And I'm sure you probably feel that way with silo events. I hope people come. Everybody else is like, obviously they're going to come. It's like 80 to 100 people that come every time. But I was just happy that it worked. And then it is funny how when you start to give permission, actually Eden just said this to me in an interview the other day, an actual interview, not a chit chat.
Wow.
But she was saying something along the lines of, as long as you never accept that where you are is where you're going to stay and you just have this openness to keep moving forward, you will keep moving forward. You're not going to stay stagnant. So I definitely feel that this position is a little daunting, but I've always felt that way about anything Older and Wiser. When I started it, I was just trying to pay for college. I was like, maybe this idea will work. Maybe it won't. And then everything that I did that felt like an expansion was with that mindset of, if this works, that would be incredible. If it doesn't, at least I tried and my portfolio is expanded and whatever. So that's kind of how I feel about this job is like, if I mess it up, I'm surrounded by good people. So nothing terrible is going to happen to me.
Right.
But if I do good.
Then what?
Then I think, dare I say it, the creative community may have a whole new opportunity, like for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't bring that many people into a building and not have new ideas and personalities and creativity just completely transforming a space.
It only takes it only takes one person to transform a space.
Yeah.
But when two or more people come together,
yeah,
there's like more life than what was there. And I think an awesome example is when I had Eden on, speaking of Eden, when I had Eden on last season, her talking about how she's starting to like expand into luxury weddings. And now she's in Monaco, Nice, like Spain or whatever. Like
in Vogue.
Right now, printed in Vogue. Like
I'm
not
obsessed.
only has she come so far, she was already there basically last season.
Yeah.
But like now she's literally not in the United States as we're recording this.
Yeah.
Which is just so cool.
Yeah.
And because she's probably left her future wide open and just said, I'm going to work towards this direction.
She is also like one of the most intelligent, analytical people. True. Like she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
Even if she's like super humble, that woman knows what she's doing. And she's like willing to back it up. She's willing to like go for it and grind. And I respect her so much for that, truly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we had the podcast last fall. We're just going to talk about Eden for a second.
Let's do it.
And then we were talking about like all the stuff that she said. And she sent me this like 8-minute voice memo and then another 7-minute voice memo and then like a 9-minute voice memo, like all in a row on like a Friday after or something. And I remember going on a walk, listening to all of those. And I'm like, Eden, what are we doing? We got to, you're doing this thing right now. And I'm like, bro, I know we didn't say this on the pod, but like this needs to be said to people.
Yeah.
And like she had a whole vision cast out for herself and like said it with like courage and was just like, no, this is going to happen to me.
Yes.
I am going to do this. And I'm like,
vision, I feel like, is what sets somebody apart. If you have the vision and you are actively, I'm not talking about like just manifesting, because I really don't necessarily believe in that. I think that if you are like, I don't think that manifesting is you really pulling something towards you. I think it's just you changing your perspective. People don't realize how much is right within reach. And so many of us disqualify before you even try, before you even put your hands out. And there's a difference too between being like, well, why isn't it coming to me? Because you have to be careful not to fall into a victim mindset, which is, why are these things not coming to me? I deserve these things, in kind of like a whining voice.
There's still action to be done on your end.
Versus, this is my vision, I am going after these things. And I don't think that if you're saying that and going after it, even if you're taking the tiniest, seemingly irrelevant step, it will come. I just keep seeing it with people. I mean, I've seen it for myself. I've seen it for Eden and countless other creatives where they're just like, this is my next step. No matter how small it is, I'm doing it. And then they do it quietly. And then years pass by and other people don't pay attention to how much time has passed. And they're like, wow, everything is just really working out for that person. Like, they get things handed to them or whatever. And it's like, they spent years doing that, you know?
In silence, like they are just moving without the world having to see them.
And I get heated about this because
Go at it.
I get heated about this because people, they say it with like this tone of judgment of like, everybody, they just get things handed to them, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the fact that the person who's getting the things handed to them doesn't even say anything, and they're just like, yeah, no, like, again, we're really harping on Eden right now. I'm sorry, Eden.
This is an Eden episode without Eden here.
She is incredibly humble. When I see her and I'm like, so crazy what you're up to right now, she always is just like, yeah, it's a blessing. You know, it's crazy. And I'm like, I know that you worked your butt off and you're just being like so chill about it.
Yeah, and it makes me a little sour. I'm like, dude, just say how cool you are.
And then like the second that somebody, because I know some people who say this of like, blah, 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 they didn't even work for it. I'm like, I will literally go outside with you right now and we're going to fist fight over this, because do not disrespect that person's effort. It is real. And that's why so few people have it, because only the few will actually fight for it. You know,
only the few will fight for it.
I fought for a little bit and then I was like, I'm going to go work for someone else. This is too hard.
But that's also a path, because I've said in another episode that like for so long, and I remember the exact moment where I got like really humbled about like, not everyone does want to be a full-time creative or at least entrepreneur in the way that you have an LLC or whatever. Like you can still work for someone and be a creative and do the exact same stuff that you're doing.
It's way easier.
And you get health benefits without trying to do anything sometimes. But like I got humbled at a Mosaic when I got up in front of everyone, and you might have been there. Probably not something you would remember, because it just like, it like took the air out of me, is when I was up there with Gavin and I was like, yeah, and everyone here, our goal is to go full-time creative and step out of our hobbies. And I looked around and I locked eyes with someone, and I knew that they didn't want to do that. And then afterwards they came up to me and they're like, some of us like don't, and in a way loving way, some of us like actually kind of enjoy working with like the structure of someone not over your head, but like just, you know, helping you along. And I'm like, oh, that was me projecting so hard. That was like, me projecting so hard.
I just like laser focused, my bad. Yeah, because you have to keep yourself on track. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah. And there's no right way or wrong way to do that. But I remember realizing that I can't project that to this community either.
Yeah, and sometimes you also have to give yourself permission. Like when I was in it, and again, when I was in it, I was also 21, 22, so different energy level, whatever. I'm not like ancient, but it was, I felt this pressure of, I came so far, I can't give up now. I'm not allowed.
Yo, enjoying this episode? Please consider subscribing on YouTube or leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or wherever you're getting your podcast. It really does help push out to more people, and we need more eyes on these amazing creatives that we are highlighting in this season of the Silo podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, leave a 5-star review on those platforms and a comment down below. Now let's get back into the episode.
I just kept building and building and building, and I started feeling the pressure of, well, first I felt the invitation of, oh, I could really do this. Let me drop out of college, and that was exciting because I was constantly thinking of new ideas, new partnerships, and also it was exciting to think of, yeah, I do want to be my own boss. Let me explore that for a little bit. And I gave myself time to explore it. I think maybe a year and a half, 2 years of hardcore monetizing. Then I switched to community stuff, and then I realized I don't want to combine these two things. I don't really want to keep up with the bookkeeping, and you have to chase clients or put yourself out there, and yeah, I didn't really want to do that. And the fight of, I don't know, just not like embarrassment or anything like that severe, but there is this tinge of emotion of like, I can't come this far and then decide I don't want to do it because now I'm identified as this thing. So
it's a sunk cost fallacy. Like, you've done it for so long or you invested so much, you can't give it up.
Let me just do it. Or this is what people are saying I am, and I feel comfortable in this role, so let me just do it. But then after a while, I was like, I actually don't want to have my brain turned on 24/7. Like,
it's a real thing.
It is a real thing. And that is not just a 1 or 2 person thing. If you're going to run your own stuff, it is all the time. You're never going to get to turn it off. And the trade-off it wasn't enough for me. So yeah, that's why I decided to not do it and to just go work for other people. And now, ironically, I trained my brain to stay on that much all the time that I have to really fight to not do that in my jobs for other people. They don't expect me to leave my brain on all the time.
Yeah.
But it'll be like 7 p.m. and I'm like, I guess I could work some more or something. Like, I'm just sitting here because that's what I did.
Yeah.
But I don't need to. But yeah, it's not for everybody. And that is totally fine.
What would you say to your younger self now that you've experienced life without like imposed identity on you?
See, it is hard because, yeah, when you look back, it's like, well, those experiences are the only way I learned. And I think it's hard because in your developmental years is when so much of those things are established. And depending on your upbringing, if it was good or bad or whatever interpretation of that it might have been, usually if somebody is really intense in a particular way, it's because they went through something that their brain was like, this is how we survive. We have to be this way. So I don't look back on my younger self and think, you were just too much, baby girl. You should have really adapted, because that was me trying to fight my brain that was telling me we have to survive this way, you know? I think that I probably would have tried to comfort my past self a little bit and been like, it's really not that big of a deal if you have the nuance. Not everybody is expecting you to march in line to this specific role. And if anything, when you're young, people are giving you the grace to do that more. So I think I wish I would have explored that nuance more gently instead of just switching back and forth really harshly. But I don't know, because that's the only way that you find balance is by going for it. So I don't know.
Mic drop moment. So many of these this season.
I'm just rambling. Hopefully it makes sense. But
we're having a little chit chat, Helen.
Yeah. I think I would look back and I would at least say that I was proud of my younger self for trying, because so many people don't. And I would have rather been reckless and made mistakes and burned bridges and done stupid things than to have just grown up and been like personalityless or not have any skills, or like I was so bad at so many jobs. I can't believe I didn't get fired from them. But I look back on that and I'm like, you learned purely out of shame not to act like that. And now you're doing great. You know?
You're doing great.
So yeah, good job, past Helen. Way to be dumb.
It was the perfect time to be dumb.
Yeah.
Back when you were younger. Perfect
So
time.
proud of you. Now we're honing it in. Yeah. I think nurturing is also a newer idea for me because I don't know if it's because we live on the East Coast. I come from a family of very strong, straightforward women. And then I grew up in more of like a single parent household, predominantly with my mom. So, which she's very nurturing. I'm not dissing Dorothy. Dorothy.
We could never
touch Dorothy. We can't. No, she's probably listening. Anyways,
Sup, Dorothy?
Hey, Dorth. So yeah, when I first moved to the Midwest, actually, that was one of the things that I got comments on was like, hey, just so you know, you can't actually talk to people like that all the time. Like you're being too harsh, you're being too aggressive. So then which was unintentional in my heart, I was still thought I was being normal, thought I was being kind, whatever. So I started to hear that and think I must not be a very nurturing person, even though I care. And in recent times, basically when I got like baby fever, I realized I'm hella nurturing. Like I love building a space for people to feel comfortable, to feel like family. I have felt also in spreading out so much energy all the time that I feel more selective about being nurturing. And I think that's okay too. You don't have to be all things to all people, but finding your pocket, I still think is hugely important to really making an impact where people need it most. Like we're all starved of genuine connection, authentic love, all of those things. So that's definitely something I'm playing with right now is how can I take the concept of nurturing someone, of loving someone, creating a safe space, and how can I inject it into these unconventional ways, whether that's through work or creative events, the content that you're putting out. I want to create curiosity for other people of why they feel the way they do, comforted or taken care of, in a way that makes them also want to explore that past our interaction, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How do you guide people to ask those kinds of questions about their work and themselves?
Well, Caleb and I actually talked about this on his Creative Audit podcast.
Creative Audit. Let's go, Caleb.
We're just name dropping. Love a good name drop episode.
Of course.
So yeah, we were talking about this with art and how you probe questions in people.
That's an art in itself, asking questions.
Yeah.
Which I am learning as I'm doing this podcast.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I prefer to create, I guess, a certain sense of like whimsy. Whimsy feels too light, I guess. Like mystery or awe or, like just that spark that you feel when what I think it is when you see or hear truth. I mean, I also think that truth is love, truth is peace. Like it's a variety of things that when you feel it, it feels like home. So as often as I can when I'm in a healthy space and not overworked, like I currently am, in a healthy space, I try to create moments where people feel curiosity or joy or love or something that reminds them of the deeper things so that when they go back into whatever their daily life is, you almost just have this hunger of wanting to seek it out again. And you might not get it again from me, but you might find it in nature or in a dinner with somebody or walking down the street, whatever. But I do think that truth is always just hanging around you, right within reach. And I think I said this on Kayla's podcast too. C.S. Lewis has this quote of, which I'm going to botch it, but he's essentially saying that the fact that we desire otherworldly things is an indication that we are of another world. The fact that we are constantly not satisfied indicates that we know of another satisfaction outside of these things, like the deeper things. So again, when I'm in my healthiest state, I am eager to share that moment with somebody. Nurturing is the vehicle that I most often use because it's easiest for me to create a space or host something or have a conversation with someone where they will think something feels different here. Why does it feel different? Is there more to this? Is there more to everyday life than what I am currently fixating on? And even if they rush past that moment, it might come up again later and encourage them to think again.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you stack those over and over and over time, eventually you have conversations around truth. But it does take a long time.
Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn to get to that point, but that's kind of part of the journey of it. It's
like what else are we doing?
Yeah. It's like it's hard to go that deep in your first words with someone, right? Like there's ways to break the ice and get it down to like, oh, we're really just going to jump right into it and not ask what your favorite color is and what your name is and where you went to high school or whatever, you know, the standard is. It's like, no, like, what are you most afraid of? And maybe that you get like a one-word answer to begin with, but that plants the seed of like, no, this either space or person is different because it's not corporate or it's not just a broken world that you live in every day. Like these are pockets that you've made out of your healthiest part of your being to pour into others what you've had poured into yourself.
Yeah. And definitely I think when you're forced into those moments too fast, it can feel inauthentic. At least speaking for myself, I am quick to run away if people go to that super deep spot with me too soon. Especially if they keep doing it over and over. I'm just like, we're done. I have no interest. Why do you want to know me this quickly?
Yeah, we're not there yet.
We didn't even engage in any level of like mystery or awe or whatever. You know, I make it too complicated sometimes, but I just accept that everybody's not for everybody. So I like a slow burn. Some people like to dive right in, and we're all after the same goal, I guess. So it's fine, but
it's all about how you get there.
Yeah, don't jump right in with me, basically, is what I'm saying.
Basically, don't ask Helen anything deep until 2 years later, and then she'll maybe open up to you.
And I'll be like, wow, we really connected. It's bad. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but
I feel like I'm semi the opposite, because I think when I'm at my most frantic or undecided is when I create environments for other people that I wish I had in that moment, potentially. And this isn't fully fleshed out, but I think it's in those moments where I am not satisfied with either where I'm at, situations or whatever, is when I'm like, okay, I need to meet with other people. And then I create the community that I want to be a part of in that moment, whether that's like, okay, I'm really anxious right now. Maybe I need 100 people. That's probably not the case if I'm anxious, but I'm like, okay, no, I need to like, okay, what can I do to get 5 people in a room? And then that's when I'm able to find my grounding a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's a release almost for me in that way. And that's not for every situation, but I've noticed that over the years, that's kind of been the fuel a little bit. And at my best is when I'm like, no, I need to go out and enjoy the world without the community, which there's positives and negatives to that too.
Yeah. But just knowing where you are and what you need in that season, kind of back to that self-acceptance or whatever of this is what we need right now.
Right.
And we may need something else later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does the journey forward look like for you? Just in general in life, you're landing more on a full-time kind of creative gig rather than the do-it-yourself route.
Yeah, well, I definitely exist in a lot of unknowns. I would say particularly at this time in life, even more unknowns than usual. Kind of every aspect of my life except where I live. Luckily, that's not unknown. But pretty much every other aspect is up in the air. And I feel like within the next year, those things will balance out. And I have a tendency to put timelines on things, partially because of just needing to like cope in a certain way. So my resting state is always very abstract and just like everything is up in the air. So having some timeline of by this date or this month or this year, I have to just make a decision.
Sure.
Period.
It's like a little check-in kind of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that too.
But a lot of the stuff I'm in right now is kind of like a trial phase, you know, like this new position at the Grotto. I work for a design studio currently as their project coordinator, but I also am being invited in to manage some of the face-to-face client interactions and
Sick.
represent that, you know,
Yeah.
which is daunting because that's important to them. You know, I'm the newbie. I don't want to screw it up. So I have no idea where a lot of these things will go, but I'm trying to look at it as, because I feel how difficult it is. And it is a lot of tension to carry. There's also other things like in my personal life that are up in the air too. And it's probably been that way for like at least a year with all these jobs and things moving around. And I feel the exhaustion of I would really love to not be in this place. But also for some reason, I am choosing to still be here.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like we have full control over our lives. Controversial.
Not to me.
I love that. Not to me. I do think that we have full control over our lives, even if we feel out of control. So I can tell myself, I don't want it to be this way. I wanted things to just be settled and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, that's not true because they aren't. So there must be a part of me that's still like, I'm unsure and I'm trying to learn what I need to learn in this moment. Whether that is, this is how I hold tension. This is how I be a leader. This is how I just make a decision and sit with it, you know? So I guess that is my way forward at the moment.
Yeah.
Is carrying this tension, but also trying to not destroy my body at the same time because massive amounts of cortisol and adrenaline is not good for you.
Nope.
Prolonged seasons. So I guess I'm comfortable with that, which is funny because the last time we had a chit chat, I think it was not the same thing, but similar of like, I don't really know what's coming.
Yeah. You close a chapter and you're just like, this
and
life is going to happen from here on out.
Things came. Yeah. But I'm not really a planner. Besides my deadlines of like, we have to make a decision.
Right.
So
I think it's interesting, like, because I do have those deadlines, but I'm also like, touching on what you said earlier about like when you can have control over your life. And I get really passionate when someone says like, yeah, I'm stuck in this position. And I fully believe that like, sure, I believe that they understand that they don't feel like it, but like from my outside perspective, I can see you just changed these like few things. Mm-hmm. Like I know you want to be free from whatever this stress is or whatever this like dead end job is or whatever this looks like. And I'm like, I feel so enraged that like the world has put these like this cage around you saying that you can't leave or your emotions are who you are
and not even in like a judgmental way of like you're doing this to
No,
yourself.
it's an encouraging way.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you can get out of here.
That's the feeling I always have too of like there's just always a way through.
Yeah.
And I think for me that's because of having sorry Dorth if you're listening, traumatic childhood. But there was a way through.
Yeah.
And you just keep getting through these bad situations in life and like realizing like you can do it. There's always a way through.
It comes from probably overcoming what they've been through.
Yeah.
You know, if you were able to have hope in that moment, what does it look like? Or like you've experienced it in the same way that like if you're a cancer survivor, maybe you go on to talk about your experience to people that are going through it and like helping them through that process. I think there's an equivalent to that in almost everything where it's like, if you've been through it, you can help coach people out of whatever that thing is.
Yeah. I feel like that would just be, out of all the incoherent things I might have said today, I feel like that would be the biggest thing for me right now is there is always going to be a way through. And I feel as though I've talked to so many creatives this year who are struggling because it is a difficult year financially. It's a difficult year emotionally with, let's be real, an election year being here. There's a lot of anxiety in general about very practical things, not even just things that creatives deal with on an emotional or mental level, because let's be real, everything is heightened for us on top of that.
Yeah.
So I guess that would just be my word of encouragement to people right now is nothing lasts forever. And so being as present as you can in this moment of how am I going to grow and change through this? Because that will last forever. Everything else situationally will change, but the work that you can do on yourself right now will be there. Is that going to be a positive thing or a negative thing? And just hold on to that hope of there's always a way through. Who do I want to be on the other side of this?
Helen, I'm not going to even say much more after that because that was wow. But Helen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again a year later.
I love a little chit chat.
Freaking crazy. Yeah, what the chit chat is this about? All right, we'll see you in the next one.